Hi guys, my name is Damian Bunting and I'd like to welcome you to Gun Rights Matter Oregon. Right now, Oregon is looking at quite possibly the most restrictive gun legislation to come down the pipe with Measure 114. This is going to be a measure that will be on the ballot for the November 8th election, and it looks to ban the sale, import, and manufacture of AR-15s, to also cap magazine capacity at no more than 10 rounds, and to require people to obtain a license simply to purchase a firearm. Now, in the coming months, you're going to hear from groups like Lift Every Voice Oregon, Moms Demand Action, and Newtown, where they're talking about all of the emotional triggers of the deaths in Uvalde, Parkland, and other school shootings. And they're going to talk about how this legislation will help to reduce gun violence and potentially prevent mass shootings. Now, none of us, definitely including myself, are sympathetic to any of the mass shooters or mass shootings that have happened. None of us want to see that. However, I think that the practicality and the reality of our lives, our situations, specifically here in Portland, I think that gets lost in the emotional conversation. Now, I have started this page to get information out to my fellow security guards and fellow 2A supporters, but more importantly, people who are just unaware about the realities of firearms. I am not here to try and change your perspective or your position politically or how you view firearms. However, I do want to bring to the table a little bit of sensible conversation. One thing that you hear a lot is common sense gun reform, common sense gun control, common sense gun ownership. And I feel that I truly do embody the common sense side of this argument. With this page, I'll be providing some information from my own personal experience that hopefully will help you to understand what is going to happen with this measure, Measure 114. I want to leave you guys with a little bit of a story. You know, a lot of times in the gun control debate, it's always brought to a position or a place where people are sharing these emotional stories. You hear the parents with the Moms Demand Action group or Lift Every Voice Oregon, and they always talk about, you know, their movement being based around the emotional response to seeing people killed due to gun violence. And I would like to share with you guys a personal story. 1996, I'm a junior going into my senior year, and my sister, who is 6 years older than I am, was living with this group of people. They were all living with this guy. His name was Bill Rummel. And Bill Rummel, back at the time, he was the party guy. Now, you know, there's some issues within my family that we could talk about that we had with that situation, but there's a bigger point that I want to get to. Bill had a daughter who was about 3 years older than me at the time. Her name was Letitia, and I had a crush on Letitia. One night, I was invited to a pool party at Bill's house. All the college-age kids, the over 20 crowd, everybody partying, having a great time and swimming, and I just fell in love with this young lady named Letitia. Now, me being in high school and her being, you know, 2 or 3 years older, there was really no chance that she was going to date me or fall in love with me, but there was some flirtation there, and me being a young man, I was absolutely smitten with this girl. One night, Letitia was at work at a Subway in downtown Little Rock, and a guy that actually I had gone to school with was dating her. And the reports are that they were engaged to be married. But long story short, this guy that I had gone to school with that was dating this girl that I had a crush on, he and a friend decided to rob the Subway. They contacted Letitia via phone, and they told her that in no uncertain terms they would be there in a few minutes, and they had intended to rob the Subway. Her job was to allow this to happen and make it look like a robbery. She declined. She didn't want any part of it, and she told the guy that she was dating, quote unquote, that she did not want to be a part of this scheme. Well, they showed up anyway. Within minutes, they came into the Subway store, and they demanded that she hand over money and that she participate in this, which she refused to do. They shot Letitia directly in the head and they killed her. I never saw her again. Who I did see about 8 months after this, when I was entering the military, was her father. When you enter the military, they sequester you basically, and they put you in a hotel to make sure you don't run away. And on the night before I was set to leave Little Rock to go into the military, I was staying at a downtown hotel. I go into the elevator, and in the elevator is Bill Rummel, Letitia's father. I had not seen him since before she was murdered. And when I looked at him and recognized him, he looked at me and recognized me. Bill was a broken man. He was a shell of himself. He looked at me, and before I could say, "Bill, I'm sorry about your daughter," he shook his head. He didn't want me to say anything. I looked down at his hand. He had a bottle of whiskey, and he looked like his life was absolutely over. That was the longest 30-second ride in that elevator, being next to a man that had lost his daughter to gun violence. But it was a different type of gun violence. You see, in our society, we are all relegated to being victims. I can guarantee you that the thought of her having a firearm to be able to protect herself in that moment probably never crossed her mind. Probably never crossed her father's mind. And I'm sure that there were many policies from Subway or places like Subway that would not allow someone to be personally armed to protect themselves in that situation. Unfortunately, she lost her life. And Bill, I don't know whatever happened to him, he lost his daughter. This is the reality of the world that we live in. We live in an evil place where someone who is engaged to someone participates in the murder of that person. These are the stories that groups like Moms Demand Action and Lift Every Voice Oregon don't want you to think about, but you should think about them. We live in a dangerous time, and in Portland, we live in a dangerous place, and none of us should be relegated or obligated to being a victim or ending up like Letitia Rummel. And that is why I support the Second Amendment, why I support personal protection, and why you must vote against Measure 114 this November. Stay tuned for more videos. Be great.